Hey everyone, welcome back to another week of the show. Thanks so much for being here with me today. What we're going to be talking about today is relapse prevention. Personally, in my personal recovery today, I believe that self-awareness is my greatest tool. And I've heard it said a lot in the rooms that self-awareness really is our greatest tool as people in recovery. Because no one knows us better than we know ourselves, and we know what makes us tick, and we know what, sort of our triggers are. It's important to use that self-awareness to our advantage. So we know when things are putting us in a certain type of mood or giving us a certain type of feeling. So using that self-awareness to recognize our triggers, recognize when we think we might be in relapse mode, and then applying the offsets or the balances to it. Like, if I am exhibiting the behaviors of attention seeking, then I should go to a meeting. So that's kind of like a broad idea of what I'm talking about, but I would challenge you to dig deeper than that. I would challenge you to figure out really what those relapse warning signs are, because we talk about one of a person in recovery's biggest relapse warning signs is isolation. Well, my isolation probably looks a lot different than your isolation does. For some people, isolation is under the covers in the room and they don't come out for days at a time. My isolation looks a lot different. So it's important to know yourself and to learn. And we talk about getting to know ourselves in recovery. That's one of the ways that we do this, is kind of exploring, going back, looking at our life story. And if you're not a person, if this is your first time in recovery and you've never relapsed, I would challenge you to look at some of the triggers before each time you used, like what was happening that was going on around you, and what sort of was the onset of the drug use. And that usually points back to some of our relapse warning signs. Also, another huge part of relapse prevention is working your program. Make sure that you're constantly working. One of the biggest suggestions in the rooms is every day, make sure you do at least one thing for your recovery. Somebody will probably argue with me and say, no, it's 5. You're supposed to do 5 things for your recovery every day. That really is between you and your sponsor as well. But making sure that you're working your steps, you're attending meetings regularly, you're in touch with your sponsor, you're being of service. That's so huge and instrumental in keeping us connected. Most meetings that I go to, they have a meeting after the meeting where people will go out to eat afterwards, making sure that you're being connected to the fellowship, making sure that you're friends with these people outside of the program too. It's not just about having this group of people that you go and see once a week, it's about doing life together and having a community. So I think that's probably the most important part of relapse prevention, is doing what you know you're supposed to do. Now that being said, I did talk a lot about that self-awareness, and I just kind of want to talk a little bit more about how you gain that self-awareness and how you apply that self-awareness. So I said before, that coming up with a list of what your relapse warning signs look like, and then also coming up with a list of ways to pull you out of that mode or that mood. One of the things on my list, which of course I recommend sharing this with your support group as well, was kidnap me. Throw me in the car and make me have a girl's day, or what I mean, something like that. So coming up with also not just figuring out what makes you tick, but also figure out what can counteract that. And again, that self-awareness is going to give you that. What'll make you feel better when you're in that moment. So communicate that, write that down on paper, share it with people, so that as well, when you're feeling down or you're feeling low, you can look back on this paper and go, A, it's okay for me to feel like this, because that just happens, it's part of life, it's normal. But B, what can I do to make myself feel better in this situation? And it could really be something as simple as getting to a meeting, but it could be more than that. It could be you need to get to a meeting and share at that meeting. Or you need to get to that meeting, share, and get phone numbers from that meeting. You just never know, and there's so many different opportunities And then, of course, my biggest suggestion is in this area to ask people for their experience, strength, and hope in dealing with relapse prevention. It's so important that we continue to work on this and that we have, these strengths built up for when in those weak moments, we're able to kind of know we have a solid landing. Thanks so much for watching again this week. I really appreciate you being here. Just as a reminder, I am not a licensed professional. I do not have any certifications or any fancy letters behind my name. I'm just a person in recovery who's here to share my experience, strength, and hope on these particular topics. Remember, if you haven't already, please ask me some questions, leave some comments, also hit that like button, and if you haven't already, hit subscribe. I'm ready. Hashtag SpongeBob.